Here I come. Hey everybody, what's up? It's your man Jake Kev here with Leif Taylor having our weekly conversation around all things health, wealth, relationships, happiness, and everything in between. So what's up with you, Leif?
Shoot, not much, bro. Just the same old, grinding every day, relaxing on this Friday night. Today is Friday, so
Yeah,
just
yeah.
chill out and relax. Normally during the week, I'll still be working, but right now I'm just fading into relaxation.
But that's what I like to hear because today we're talking about coping with stress and also we're talking about personal responsibility and accountability. And I'm picking up. I picked up on the word. The key word is relax, and that's something I think that can't be stressed enough when it comes to taking care of yourself and just taking care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Even talking about relax, rest, restoration, especially in today's world, Leif. And I guess a couple of things that's kind of gotten me thinking about this and going in this direction is just thinking about the current climate that we're
Mm-hmm.
in, and just thinking about a lot of events that have taken place and that is currently taking place right now with right now, off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the Breonna Taylor case in
Yep.
Louisville, given that we live in Kentucky and we don't live, a stone's throw away from Louisville, and just thinking about all the things that's happening there and has happened there, and just thinking about other things in my personal life and in, just you out there listening, thinking about things in your personal life, and just thinking about how important it is that we find those times, we find those margins to kind of just settle into. Today, you said today is Friday. Right now, we're having this conversation, and Fridays to me, and I think to you too, represents a moment of transitioning into
Yep.
a relaxation mode and a mode in which we kind of let a lot of things fade to the sides and let the most important things come to the forefront, take priority, thinking about family, relationships, friendships, thinking about community, thinking about spirituality, and then purpose. Thinking about all those things that if you're working a 9 to 5 or if you're an entrepreneur doing your hustling and grinding, those things kind of for a lot of us, take the back seat when it comes to meeting our obligations and responsibilities. So just thinking about um, to make sure that we cultivate those margins to where we can stop and settle in, and be present and just kind of cultivate a mindset of gratefulness and thankfulness. And that's one of the things that I find key when it comes to stress relief and
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to just managing, all the aspects of our humanity that we can, so that not only we can just survive and get by, but also flourish and thrive too. And I know that's, a lot of things that I say, a lot of words that we speak is easily said.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
uh, it's different when it comes to living out, and it can be different when it comes to like just allowing yourself to experience life in all its ranges and all its colors that you possibly can, and take it in stride and learn how to be content in those things. Is this super loud?
I can't tell what it's like for the audience. My speakers are way up, so
Oh, okay, okay, okay. I'm outside, so I'm having to deal
it's
with
all
the
good.
elements. That's cool.
Yeah,
I'm
it's all
trying to
good.
speak up, speak loud, speak clear, but yeah, just thinking about some tactics and things that we can do when it comes to relieving stress and managing stress. And one of the things that I always come back to is making sure that we find moments to just meditate. And when I say meditate, I simply mean just find a moment where you can just breathe and just kind of relax and just anchor yourself in the present, not worry about the past, and not, be anxious about the future, but just be like, hey, I'm here now. I'm grateful. This is what I do have. I'm grateful for these things. And I'll put worrying about the things that I don't have.
Okay, Kevin. I think I lost you for a second there.
for it.
Okay, you're going in and out on me. So what we're talking about until Kevin comes back on, we're talking
things
about
that's not present.
Okay, yeah, you're back. Okay, I was great. Go ahead and just explain what you were talking about. So go ahead. You dropped out for about.
I can't hear you.
Oh, you dropped out for a quick minute. Can you hear me? Okay, Kevin's having a little technical difficulties. He'll click back in and I'll add him back to the stream. So basically what we're talking about today is we're talking about stress relief, different ways to relieve stress, different ways to decompress from what's going on. He mentioned the Breonna Taylor case, and a lot of, people are anxious. You still got the protesting going on. You still got different things popping up all over the United States in different areas. And also what we're going to talk about going further as well in the discussion is personal responsibility. So Kevin wanted to talk about stress release, and I wanted to talk about the personal responsibility, because to me, they kind of go hand in hand. And also for me personally, I was just thinking about all the different things that are going on social media, and how, from the standpoint of personal responsibility, we're not only the kindling for the fire, we are the fire as well. And what I mean by that is when one, just to get to the stress release side point of it, sometimes you just need to step away from all the things that are, just taking over the airwaves, taking over your screen time. Take a step away from the things that are really poking and prodding at you to get an emotional response. And then also just thinking about the response that you have to the poking and prodding, and how that makes you the kindling for the fire to keep things going. But not only that, sometimes we continue to stoke fires. It's almost like it's one thing for me to fight with you, and it's another thing for me to convince you to keep fighting everybody else. And so when I was thinking about the personal responsibility, I was thinking about myself first and foremost. And, with all the stuff, going on, and I know for a fact that, every 4 years, every 2 years, actually, depending on, who's being elected for what, you get these ads and all these things that you cannot escape. You just can't escape it as long as you have screen time, as long as you have any media playing in your household. You will not be able to escape it. I was in a meeting earlier today, as a matter of fact, and they were, the person I was meeting with was like, yeah, go look up this reference video, so we can have a discussion around it. And of course, the first thing that pops up when I go look at the reference video is a political campaign, right? Political ad. And these things are constantly ongoing, constantly making you upset about current scenarios, because when you look at these political ads, it's not even saying how I can help you. It's really pointing to the fact that this person is so bad, you have to choose me. And it's kind of a disingenuous way of getting, voter support. It's like, okay, I want you to hate this other person so bad to where I look like a good candidate, instead of making myself look like a good candidate. And so anyway, we had a little discussion. It's like, yeah, can't escape this stuff. So when I start thinking about the personal responsibility, I think about a comment I made years ago, and actually it was a friend of mine. His name is Randy Huckle. He made a comment. We were talking about the machine. The machine in terms of the media and all of this stuff. And he said something that's very true. He said, "We are the machine." This stuff doesn't work without us. When we talk about, the people in office, and, the corruption that goes on in government, and the corruption that goes on with these cases and all these things, in essence, we put them there. And in essence, when I talk about personal responsibility, us putting them in office puts us in these precarious scenarios. And this is not always the case, but a lot of the times it has to do with us and our involvement in terms of, okay, why is, a lot of people are upset with Daniel Cameron, but how did he get there? We put him there. We voted for him. It's like, oh, okay, we'll put Daniel Cameron in. And so when we start thinking about this stuff, we have to think about, what role did I play in this? Sometimes you don't know that you played a role. And so when you think about personal responsibility, take a step back, you know, in your meditation time or any other time, and really think about, okay, what is my involvement in this overall system? What did I do to either help or to negate the outcomes that we're currently fighting against? Sometimes there's nothing you can do, but a lot of times there's things that you've done, you know, unintentionally that have repercussions down the road. You know, it's sometimes it is your civil engagement, and sometimes it's your lack of civil engagement, and you have to weigh those options for your own personal choices. But even before we get to that, I was thinking about society as a whole when I was thinking about the personal responsibility, and I was thinking about it from the standpoint of, okay, you know, we're in the era of the clap back, or maybe they call it something new.
Cancel culture.
Yeah, where everybody wants to clap back at all of these people, and it's like we're the problem a lot of the times as well. Because, you know, we talked about the social media stuff and the algorithms, how basically the person that you're arguing with doesn't even see the same thing you see. So you're really arguing with yourself. You're really arguing with like-minded people in a sense, unless you're like a news outlet, which then you get differing opinions. And that's when you get the news feeds and all of that. But if you look at your own timeline, chances are everybody that you're fighting against is not even viewing what you're fighting or viewing those opinions. You know, it's like, and so you're, you know, going back to the stress that Kevin was talking about, sometimes you're adding fire to your own stress for no audience at all. And you're just perpetuating this frenzy and this polarization that they're trying to get you to do anyway. So anyway, go ahead, Kev.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that, yeah, there's enough blame to go around. And the point you made about a lot of times, you know, we don't see the same situation the same way somebody else does. And that, you know, that's where or even at all.
Yeah.
And the one thing about social media and being online is that if you don't take those moments of those where you can kind of relax and de-stress and kind of take a step back, then you can find yourself easily caught up in the algorithms and in the contagious emotional tide that is being, you know, perpetuated or being propagated out there to get caught up in. And like you said, a lot of things that's going on is with our consent, whether we realize it or not. And it's up to each and every one of us to have or take and think about our personal responsibility and how we participate or don't participate in the system and how things are running and going. Yeah, so those are very good points when you're talking about personal responsibility and being accountable, and just thinking about the social media and things like that, and society at large, and our participation and our involvement and how that affects things. A lot of things really can't happen without our consent, which is why it's important for politicians and for people in influential positions to manage our consent. As I'm talking, I'm thinking about a book by Edward Bernays, Propaganda, but there's another one talking about consent. I'll see if I can find it. And he talks about that very point, to where nothing can really happen without, you know, our consent. So we have to think about where we want to, expend energy and participate, and then where we don't want to do that. And I know that's going to be different for everybody, but it's very important. Like you said, it's vital, because if we don't, then you do end up with situations like Breonna Taylor, and you can end up with other situations too, across the gambit. I just don't want to focus on that, but I'm bringing it up because it's something that's at the forefront of people's minds right now.
Yeah, and the one thing I was thinking about, with the Breonna Taylor, it had nothing to do, which actually made me start thinking about this. It had nothing to do with the decision in and of itself. It really had nothing to do with that situation as a whole, but it started making me think about blame, right? When I think about blame and how, people point fingers and blame certain, whether they blame institutions, whether they blame politicians, or whether they do whatever, right? And I was thinking about why these things work so much, right? Val said she had to back up. Yeah, you got to back up off of this stuff, or that your blood pressure will just run crazy. But I was thinking about the whole aspect of blame and how it takes away from your own choices and your own responsibility. For example, I'll say like in a household, right? Say that I got kids, so we have toys and stuff all over the house in any given day, right? And if I step on a toy, then it's like, do I blame my kids, or do I pick it up and then teach them not to make sure that they don't put the toys back in the same position? So when I think about, the reason why polarization works is because, just as I mentioned with the political ads, it's easy to blame somebody else for everything that's going on, as opposed to showing how you yourself can fix it. And I started thinking about this from a smaller level, from just the relationship standpoint, is what is your responsibility to the people around you? How do you treat people around you? Then not only that, how do you treat people in your community at large? Then not only that, how do you treat, other people outside of your community? Because again,
Right.
all of this backtracks to how we treat people in general. And I really started thinking about that, and that feeds back into the whole clap back, I'm going to show them, I'm going to tell them, and all of this. And I'm like, the only people that are seeing, the things that you're talking about are the people that are grouped together with you that think the same way. So in order for it, they have to do it that way, so you can create a frenzy type mentality to where you can keep the energy going. Because if I go to a Klan rally and I talk about, Martin Luther King, it ain't going to go over too well, and the conversation ain't going to last too long. But if I go somewhere where somebody feels the same way, then it's going to keep feeding back into itself. She said, you asked them to pick up after them. Yeah. But again, she's talking about the toy stuff, but that goes back into my responsibility as an adult to teach them to do better. It's one thing for me to yell at them, and it's another thing for me is like, okay, well, maybe I haven't really shown them the proper way to handle the toys, right? Maybe I haven't shown them, where it needs to go, or stayed on them enough to where it becomes a habit. And so that's my personal responsibility, as opposed to me putting the blame on the kids for having toys out. And that's pretty much what I'm going to. A lot of times it's so easy for me to cast stones at other people. Like the scripture says, the Bible said, you're trying to get a speck of wood out of somebody else's eye, and you got a whole mote in your own. You got a whole beam, right? And so it's that kind of thing that be sure that you don't get caught up in the aspect of pointing the finger at others and negating all responsibility that you have for yourself.
Okay. So yeah, so you're stressing the point about looking inward and like you said, self-reflecting and looking at our own actions first, versus looking outward. And when you were talking, you were making me think of, well, first I have to get to a certain level of maturity as far as being virtuous and being moral and being I have to obtain a certain level in order to manage somebody else's. I have to be at a certain level in order to manage my kids, right?
Yeah.
Or we can't be at the same level. So I have to take the time. I have to put down my pride, and I have to, study, be a disciple before I can be a leader. I have to do the things to take care of myself before I can be of any assistance or be of any help to anybody else, or be able to even comment on the larger things that's taking place around me.
Yep.
Stephen Thurston Oliver, we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And that's life, right? We were born into a world that we didn't create. And so it's up to us to figure out how to navigate the world. And everybody is going to have a different way of going about it. He said we have to cultivate that ability. And that's kind of what I'm getting at in the sense of, because I had a conversation with somebody, and this is part of what made me think about this way. It was the other day, and they're like, you know what? I just want to tell this person about how bad, their family is, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what makes you think they don't know? And they were like, well, because I was like, but that doesn't mean that nobody else has told them. Sometimes people just want to ignore facts, right? It's like, it's like if I'm a butthole and just because you didn't hear somebody tell me that I'm one and everybody kind of knows I'm one doesn't mean that I haven't been told. Right. And the reason why I said that is because a lot of the times is we want to just get at somebody just so we can get it out of our own system.
So it feels good.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with us correcting. Yeah. It has nothing to do with getting correction. It has more to do with us. Okay. I'm going to let them feel me today kind of thing. Right. They're going to get this wrath.
Oh, you're going to learn today.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, I kept walking them back and I'm like, really all you want to do is basically tell them off. And I was like, what benefit is that in the long run, in the long term? Because of course, emotionally it feels good, but sometimes those things can take a wrong turn in unexpected ways, like unintended, right? And it's like, what benefit does it do if I constantly give vitriol back to you? And then because all it's going to do is create a whole cycle loop, right? We're just going to constantly keep going at each other for no reason at all, other than the fact that I felt good at the moment, but after the so many times, it becomes pointless, right? Yeah, she said we need to succumb to love first. And
that's a very tall order.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, that we all,
And so that's kind of what I was thinking. Go ahead, bro.
Well, what does that, with that statement, let's dissect that. What does that really mean? We have to succumb to love. She had it all capitalized, so I'm suspecting she's going a certain direction with that.
All right.
Well, what do you think that means, Leif? Like, what does that look like?
Ironically, it was funny. Before we got on live, I was thinking about the word love to begin with, and I was thinking about it in terms of love is bigger than words, right? A lot of times when you think about family, friends, and all these kinds of things, and sometimes people you don't even know, you're like, yeah, I love you. People be like, I love you, and those kinds of things. But when I think about what the core of love means, it's like, do you really mean it? For some people, it's easy to say, right? For some people, it's easy to say, I love you, and it's just words. But it's like, what sacrifices are behind those words?
So understanding that it's not only a feeling, but it's a noun too.
Yeah, and not only that, but it's obligation. It's real obligation. For example, it'd be like, man, I love Kevin's kids. Like, man, they the best. And Kevin's like, hey, man, I can't feed my kids. Can you take care of them for a month? How much do I really love your kids? Right? And that's what I mean by sometimes we say like words have become empty in a sense because they get so overused. It's like the word awesome, right? I say awesome a lot. And so if you say it so much, then it kind of
an awesome word.
Yeah, it loses its context, right? It loses its context, it loses its power, and it just becomes something that's frivolous, something that's meaningless. And so when we think about these things, putting love first, as she said, really what, we are being conditioned to do is protect ourselves. But love is an obligation to somebody. It's an obligation, like for my kids, like it's one thing for me to say I love your kids, and it's a different thing for me to say I love my kids, because I show my love for my own kids, right? I pay for them. I take care of their hospital bills. I clothe them. I feed them.
You expend time, energy, and life force for them.
All of that, right? And so when we say these things, you know, how much or how deep really is that? You know, because I was even thinking about it from a family level. You know, a lot of times that word is bounced around. It's like, but truthfully, is it really true? You know, to what extent is my love limited? You know, it made me just think about a Mary J. song, "Love Without a Limit," right? But it's like, is my love limited? Is it compartmentalized? You know, what does that truly mean when we think about, you know, when I say I love other people, it's like, okay, to the extent of I won't mistreat you or I won't do certain things. So, you know, is it a boundary love or is it a boundaryless or a boundless, love that you're referring to? Because it's different. You know, I can love humanity from the standpoint that, you know, every day my goal is not to harm somebody on purpose. Every day my goal is, you know, if I do see somebody that needs something, and if I have the, you know, the wherewithal to help, then I help.
And that's the core to me. When you just said that, that is the core definition of what it means to me. When you just said that, that at your core, you know, you have a selflessness or compassion towards towards humanity, versus somebody who is not filled with love is they are self-focused, and they have no issue with harming humanity, no qualms about it,
right,
even up to the point to where that's part of their desire is to harm their fellow man. So, you know, you just gave to me a perfect like little snippet of what it means at the base of what it means to be filled with love, all capital letters.
Gotcha.
And then that expresses itself in our behavior and our emotions, our actions in various colors, you know, various ways. Like I'm thinking about I'm thinking about 1 Corinthians 13. You know, it's one of the things that pops to mind is love is patient, kind, don't envy, boast, proud, you know, don't dishonor others. It's like, that's how it plays out. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. And Miles was saying is agape, you know, coming from, you know, 1 Corinthians 13 or charity, you know, and all the ways that, you know, compassion and those kinds of things. And again, going back to the whole personal responsibility aspect of the conversation, and even how that, you know, revolves around stress is, you know, because I know when my wife and I, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. So my wife and I, like when we talk about different things and how things affect us, she was like, you're just different. You know, she was like, you know, we're too different. The way we process information is different. The way we process interactions with people is way different. And so sometimes, you know, and I try to be cognizant of the way I feel about things versus the way other people feel about things, you know, because it's easy to get caught up in your own head about the way things are, because Kevin and I could be in the same space at the same time and have two different experiences, right? You know, people will treat us you know, and I'm not saying that they will, but it's possible that people would treat us completely different ways, and our take on an experience can be extremely different. And so you have to be, you know, cognizant of that when dealing with other people and the way they feel about certain things. I know she said it's about nurturing. I know when I think about like what's going on, so I'm bringing it in and I'm taking it back out to with the whole Breonna Taylor aspect of things, and, you know, the protest against police brutality and that kind of stuff. You know, some people will be like, oh man, what is the purpose of them protesting? What difference does it make? Or somebody else is like, yeah, you know, I know it happens, it doesn't bother me. You know, so different people will have different reactions. And I've mentioned this before with VGQ, victims guaranteed qualifications. So, and the reason why I bring that up is just because I don't feel a certain way about a transgression doesn't mean you don't have the right to, because you were the one that was transgressed against. So it's like, you know, with rape victims, people are like, oh, well, why didn't they come out and say something? Because she was a victim. That's for them to deal with that. You can't dictate how somebody deals with trauma.
Yeah,
you can't. Because I deal with I have twins. My twins deal with things very differently. So if they deal with things very differently, why wouldn't we, as separate, complete people with different DNA, why wouldn't we deal with it differently either? Right. And so we have to be, sensitive to those kinds of things and those kinds of reactions. And even going back to the personal responsibility aspect of it, I'm bringing it back, is making sure that when something does happen to you or something does transgress you, figure out how you want to deal with it. Figure out why you want to deal with it in a certain way, because that's very important. And the reason why I say that is because you want to make sure that your genuine reaction is your genuine reaction and not somebody's way of poking you into reacting a certain way. Right. And I say this because, we talk about media and these algorithms and these social medias all the time. And I have to make sure I check myself, because at the decision, I was typing a whole lot. And then I had to check myself, like, okay, why am I writing this? What's compelling me to go this route with this response? And who is it for? Does it matter? Does it reach the intended audience? Does it change anything in the circumstances? And then I started thinking about it for quite a while. I was like, you know what? This doesn't even matter. Why am I even subjecting myself to certain things? Because I know this is the response that they're looking for. I know this is the response to keep me engaged on this particular platform. I know that these are the things that they're going to show me. It's a whole lot of different things involved that are basically conjuring up your reaction, right? And so when I think about it from the standpoint of personal responsibility, not only why am I reacting this way, but is this healthy for me to do so? Going back to the stress and the de-stress. And it got to the point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to back away and I'm just going to chill. And then I'm going to let my own emotions process the way they need to without feedback from a system, from other people and those kinds of things, to make sure that I keep my own sanity, to make sure that I keep my own stress in check, to make sure that I'm doing what's appropriate for myself.
I'm sick of you being in my head, Mr. Taylor. Yeah, this is something, this comes up quite often whenever we talk in it. And I think it's something that we could talk about every day for a while, just because, like we keep pointing out, that we are in a heavy political cycle, considering that, and then just considering all the other things on top of that we talk about, it's essential that you, like you said, you have those moments where you stop, you pause, you take a step back, and you think about some things, just reflect and just kind of anchor yourself in the present, without outside participation, without outside influence.
Yep.
It's really important. I mean, there's a lot of books that are out that are dealing with this as far as in the mental health space. There's even there's a terminology that's kind of been coined or turned up in Silicon Valley with respect to what you just said, as far as, people in Silicon Valley are taking those hiatuses. They're taking those vacations. They're taking those sabbaticals. They're taking that time off to where they go to those places where it's like they're in a cave, away from things, to kind of get reconnected to nature and get things kind of back reoriented.
Decompress.
It's very essential. Which is why some of us do it on a weekly basis. Some of us, it's part of our culture. It's part of our DNA that every week we take that moment where we just throw some things to the side. We don't neglect them, but we just kind of set them down for a minute, and then we pick up what needs to be picked back up when it's time to come back to do our thing. This is something that is it's a fight for our generation, but not only ours, but the ones to come. It's really going to be a fight if it's not ingrained in them. So Stephen Thurston says, I've been reading a book, 10 Arguments for Deleting Our Social Media, that mentions what you are talking about. It's behavior modification. They intentionally get you hooked so that you stay on the app and get more advertising directed towards you. Yep. Yeah, it's TV taken to the next the next level exponentially, to where the hooks get into you and you can't. It's hard to get it out.
Yep. And so, and again, just knowing those things, we talk about it quite a bit on our show in particular. Just be mindful, be thinking all the time. Don't think you can outsmart the algorithms because they've been studying you longer than you've been studying yourself. Like literally, these micro interactions that you have on sites and all this stuff, they study all of that. The AI really does. It processes that information. It sees what you're more likely to click on. If you go and say, okay, these were recommended for you, all of that stuff. And again, if you're on social media and you don't use a private browser, then it's really connecting to everything that you do across your internet experience. So even if you leave Facebook, you haven't left Facebook because they got a pixel on every single site that you visit, all of this type stuff.
What's that?
No, she said, I refuse to do dishes when two grown children living. Hey, I feel you. I feel you on that. And so it's just those kinds of things that, again, when I'm talking about taking personal responsibility, I'm talking about literally just controlling yourself, having autonomy over your own being, taking that responsibility and being true to what you should be. Because sometimes we are not who we should be.
Man, that's powerful. Yeah.
Because sometimes people want to be like, well, this is how I am. Well, sometimes it's not how you're supposed to be. And so take responsibility in becoming the person that you should be, and really seeing how that impacts those around you. Like I said, internally, from your household to your community to the people at large, to the population at large, right? Think about that. Think about how you impact those things around you. And even going back to the Breonna Taylor situation and every situation like that, because when I think about the Breonna Taylor situation, it's beyond just the cops being in her house. It's like, why were they there in the first place? Why is this part of the law? Why are we still focusing on, quote unquote drugs? They try to make it all kinds of things the way we're still doing. What is the real reason behind the war on drugs? Who have I put in place?
Man, what made you think about that? The war on drugs?
Because it's all bigger. It's bigger than what it is. Yeah. And the reason why I think this way is because I had the opportunity to actually visit a police station and see how they deal with drugs. They gave me way more information than they probably should have. And so it changed my whole mindset on drugs in communities and things like that, and the way that the government deals with it. It really has less to do with addicted people than it does with money. Everything revolves around money, because even going to the Breonna Taylor scenario, if they've been surveilling this person for months, why couldn't they be arrested on the first interaction? If it was illegal, right? If that's what you really cared about. Yeah, if that's what you really cared about, then
it's all what they say. Well, we gotta follow him so we can follow.
They don't care.
I know, but that's what
I know, but again, that's what I'm talking about. So again, going back to the personal responsibility and thinking about all these things, think about how you interact with again, your household, your neighborhood, your community, and the population at large, and what role did you play in the way these things are? Sometimes you're just born in these situations, and other times there's opportunities for you to participate that you may not have thought about, right? And so it's those kinds of things that we have to consider. And not only that, is when you do spot something wrong, what are you going to do from there? What is your role from there? What are you going to do about it? What is your responsibility to change something? What is your responsibility for yourself? What is your responsibility to your spouse? What is your responsibility to your children, to your family, to your friends, to your neighborhood, to your community, to your
man? So when you was talking, I was thinking about a video I recently seen on your wife's story about the lady who was tased for not wearing her mask at a football game, and she was clearly in a section all by herself.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, the people that were watching, and just sitting there, just like. So I'm just thinking about if I'm in a situation, are you going to help me out, or are you just going to let me just get tased?
Yeah.
Or are you going to say, Kev, you should have had your mask on? Be like,
and again, that's another thing. Going back to what Dr. Oliver was talking about is behavior modification.
Yeah.
When you constantly watch these things, it's literally social media has become the Willie Lynch, right? And what I mean by that, if anybody knows like the Willie Lynch leather, whether he was real or not, doesn't matter. It's basically all it boils down to is I'm going to make an example of somebody else to modify your behavior.
And Willie Lynch is the speech collection of speeches by that's a manual on how to keep slaves in line. Pretty much is what it boils down to.
Yeah, and so when you think about that, again, is the behavior modification. If I see the same routine over and over, then the likelihood of me doing something out of the norm to help you is decreased.
Okay.
I mean, think about that's what military does, right? Military, you go through basic training camp so they can reprogram you as behavior modification to change you into who they want you to be. That's what it is. That's what boot camp is. That's what training is. It's to modify your behavior because when you came in, you was a sloppy, untrained,
undisciplined.
Undisciplined. And now, you know, whatever I tell you, you will do. And so I personally, when I think about these things, when I think about the National Guard coming out to stop citizens from protesting, even though it's supposed to be legal, when I think about those things, and when I think about personal responsibility, the behavior modification is to get you to change your personal responsibility to your fellow human being.
So you see, so you chalk up a lot of these situations, or I am interpreting what you're saying as a lot of these things that we're seeing right now is affecting us in a way that we're going through a period of behavioral modification. When I'm talking, I'm thinking about the declaration by some, organizations that this is a global reset. And I'm reading through all their different white papers and their things where we're resetting this, we're resetting that, we're resetting this. And it's like, we're seeing this play out in real time right before our eyes.
Yeah, it's literally basic psychology. It's not even complex. It's just basic psychology. Yeah. It's like, okay, when I touch this, the buzzer goes off. And only so many times I'm going to touch it. After a while, I'm just going to leave it alone, right? Yeah. And this thing is, because so when you do apps, right? You build apps, my focus was user interface and user experience and how people interact with the app. You basically guide them along the way of how to use the app. You teach them behaviors to make them use it in a certain way. With so many people using like Facebook, not everybody's going to use Facebook the same way because there's so many different variations, right? In terms of people. Somebody always breaks the system. There's always that one anomaly user that's going to break the system. But for the most part, you dictate how people use your system. And so when you start, basically you just align it. You cater the path to get them to the end designation, right? And so when you look at social media, when you look at media, all of it's the same thing. It's literally to curb your behavior in certain ways. When you look at movies, we talk about movies quite a bit. They help dictate your behavior in any given situation. I've been watching The Walking Dead lately. The other series, I just started watching it. And what I've noticed is they actually dictate how. Oh, they're fine.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't really hear them. They actually dictate how people feel about when things go bad. Because when I look at the show and I'm looking at the writing, I'm like, okay, everything always boils down to it's us against them. Every scenario that they come across, it's us against them. It's so if we have a larger group, it's our group against their group, and then inside of the group, it's our family against their family in the larger group. And so you see this and how they constantly repeat these same messages over and over. So now when people think about scarcity and that kind of stuff, your first inclination is to arm up and be ready to fight.
Follow the line. Yeah.
But says who? Think about it. we live life with everybody on a daily basis, and that's never an issue. But if you've been conditioned to think that, okay, as soon as these things happen, then the first thing I need to do is look at Kevin as my enemy because he's going to take my resources.
I start looking like a chicken leg.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I see your legs, though, so you're already there, brother. Now, but seriously, it's like when you start looking at that stuff, it's like, okay, you know, when I watch, you know, media, because I know Kevin does the same thing, it's like, okay, what is the message that they're trying to get me to think about? Or what is it that they're trying to get me to think like? And, you know, especially when you look at marketing, all marketing is there to manipulate you in some form or fashion. Everything is propaganda. And so always try to look into what those messages are specifically for you. And then once you diagnose it or whatever, what are you going to do about it? Going back to personal responsibility. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to guard yourself against it? How are you going to make the changes that you wish to see? All of that kind of stuff.
In closing, just talking about, you know, stress management, stress relief, and making sure that we carve out those times. Whenever we talk about this, I always think about The 4 C's by Dr. Robert Lustig, who wrote The Hacking of the American Mind. It's something that just it's simple. He talks about connecting, contributing, coping, and then cooking. So he talks about making those connections that really matter and cultivating them, and then contributing, just realizing that there's more to this world than my own self-interest, that I'm here to serve and be of useful to somebody. As my dad would say, go out there and make yourself useful. And then coping, finding ways to cope, whether it's sleep, whether it's just getting those few moments by yourself, and then just cooking, just getting some good nutrient-dense food in your body. That makes the world of a difference. A hangry Kevin is different from a nutrient-dense, satisfied Kevin. So that's something that's real simple when it comes to just learning how to manage stress. And then when you do that, that can help you with your personal accountability and personal responsibility, and where you'd like to work on that at, and what lane you fit in when it comes to personal responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, and that's the way I look at it as well, because I think personal accountability and responsibility leads to de-stressing life. Because if you don't control anything in your life, then you typically have more stresses. And so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about the personal responsibility in this, is because it's up to you to de-stress your life. It's nobody else's responsibility. Nobody else can do that for you. It's your own mental obligation. And so, and also the more things you control in terms of your well-being, the better off you feel. And so I just wanted to put that out there and get everybody to think along those lines.
Cool. Two shy guys at the mic, just here having a conversation. Hopefully you got a nugget of something that you could take away and apply to your life in some way, shape, or form. Hit like, share, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you're out there. We definitely appreciate you. We don't take your time or attention for granted. We understand that you have to spend it somewhere, and we're happy. We're appreciative. We're grateful that you decided to spend a little bit of it with us. So thanks for that. That's all I got, Leif.
Peace, everybody.
Peace out.